At the top of a residential stairwell, someone tries removing a chandelier while standing on an A-frame ladder that clearly isn't set up properly for the stairs below. One small shift here, and the entire setup could go sideways fast. Ladders should never be used on uneven stair surfaces unless they're properly stabilized with the right equipment. Inside a busy workshop, a worker tries to hold a growing stack of heavy wooden panels in place by hand. As more weight is added, the stack becomes harder to control. Using human strength to stabilize vertically stacked, heavy materials during the loading process creates a serious material control and pinch point hazard. As panels are continuously added, the shifting center of gravity and accumulating mass can rapidly exceed physical limits, leading to unexpected material movement or loss of proper material control. Always use engineered A-frame carts, heavy-duty clamps, or permanent racking systems to physically secure panels as they are being loaded. Materials should also be stored at a safe, mechanically supported angle, completely eliminating the uncontrolled practice of requiring workers to manually balance heavy loads by hand. On a residential street, a moving tank trailer approaches low utility lines with a worker placed in an unsafe elevated position on top of the load. A worker should not be placed in an elevated position on moving equipment to attempt line clearance work by hand. The unpredictable tension and weight of suspended cables can exceed a worker's ability to maintain balance, causing a stability issue on the vehicle and creating a major work-at-height hazard. Conduct a route survey before moving oversized equipment and coordinate with utility crews or trained bucket truck operators for any overhead line clearance work. Workers should not stand on moving equipment or materials. At an elevated construction site, two workers balance on a crane boom with a very limited safe walking surface, creating a serious elevated access hazard. The narrow, unguarded boom of a crane or exposed structural steel should not be used as a walking path or makeshift bridge. Even with personal fall protection in place, traversing slick, angled metal at a significant height creates an elevated access hazard, where the resulting support condition requires a documented retrieval plan. Always utilize engineered aerial lifts, secure scaffolding, or temporary catwalks to safely access elevated work zones instead of using machinery or exposed structural members as an access route. In a busy loading yard, a tarp pull from a loaded flatbed creates an unsafe edge positioning condition. Workers should stay away from the unguarded edge of an elevated flatbed truck when materials are being manually handled while a forklift is moving the load. The unpredictable pulling force of heavy machinery can exceed a worker's ability to maintain control, turning a minor footing issue into a balance issue at height before stability can be regained. On a sloped forest hillside, a tree begins to move while the crew remains too close to the active work area. Once a tree operation has begun, the stump area should be cleared immediately. A heavy trunk on an incline can move unpredictably, shift off its support point, or change direction with significant force, creating a controlled exclusion zone hazard for anyone positioned within the immediate work area. In a shipping container terminal, a reach stacker moves forward with a worker positioned in an area that may not be visible to the operator. Walking with your back to active heavy machinery in a busy shipping yard should be avoided unless positive eye contact with the operator has already been established. The enormous blind spots on a reach stacker mean that if a person is walking directly in its travel path, the operator may not see them, turning a momentary lapse in situational awareness into a serious equipment interface hazard. Always use designated, physically separated pedestrian walkways when navigating a container terminal. Continuous 360-degree situational awareness must be maintained, and clear two-way visual communication with any reach stacker operator should be established before crossing or entering an operational zone. Outside a roadside lumberyard, a forklift carries long beams across an active traffic lane. The overhanging load poses a serious traffic hazard to approaching road users. Long, overhanging materials should not be transported across an active public roadway without a fully secured traffic control zone. Extending unmarked construction materials into a live lane creates a difficult-to-detect elevated obstruction for approaching motorists, creating a serious traffic interface hazard before they clearly recognize the condition. Always deploy a dedicated spotter equipped with high-visibility signs or flags to halt oncoming traffic completely before moving heavy equipment into the street. Bright warning markers should also be attached directly to the furthest ends of any overhanging load. In a scrapyard, the use of a long-handled striking tool becomes difficult to control when clearance is misjudged. The operator's legs should remain completely outside the active toolpath when using a long-handled striking tool on hard, unyielding materials. Contacting a metal edge with excessive uncontrolled momentum can cause off-center contact or sudden deflection that redirects the tool's weight toward the operator's stance area. Always establish a secure, wide stance that keeps the legs completely clear of the tool's downward path and potential deflection area. Controlled, targeted contacts should be used instead of relying on sheer force. In an industrial storage yard, hot work activity takes place near wrapped materials, creating a heat exposure hazard for nearby heat-sensitive materials. Hot work or heat-producing cutting tools should only be used near heat-sensitive materials when proper protective shielding and clearance controls are already in place. Allowing heated metal particles to contact nearby packaging creates a heat exposure hazard that can develop quickly and become difficult for on-site teams to manage. Always establish a strict 35-foot clearance zone around any hot work area, removing or completely covering all heat-sensitive materials with certified protective blankets before cutting begins. A dedicated safety spotter equipped with the correct fire safety equipment should also be assigned, ensuring someone is actively monitoring where hot work byproducts travel to help prevent a secondary site hazard. At a sand excavation site, an excavator tracks too close to the edge of an unsupported embankment. Heavy machinery should be kept away from the unsupported edge of an excavation or sand pit unless a strictly calculated setback distance has been established and maintained. The substantial concentrated weight of an excavator's tracks can quickly compromise the sheer strength of loose soil, leading to an unexpected edge instability condition. Strictly enforce a 1-to-1 setback rule, keeping the equipment at least 1 foot away from the edge for every foot of the drop-off's depth. A trained ground spotter should also continuously monitor the terrain for tension cracks and shifting earth, ensuring the machine stays firmly on compacted ground well outside the exclusion zone. At a canal recovery site, a crane setup shows stability concerns as the machine's balance shifts toward the waterline. A mobile crane's load capacity chart must be followed carefully when booming out over a steep, unsupported drop-off. Attempting to lift a heavy, waterlogged load at an extended radius can push the equipment beyond its stability limit, reduce outrigger effectiveness, and create serious equipment instability hazards before the operator can correct the setup. Always calculate the exact weight of the load, including any trapped water, and rigidly adhere to the manufacturer's maximum radius limits for the lift. Outriggers must be fully deployed on solid level ground with proper cribbing placed well back from the shear edge to ensure the machine remains completely stabilized throughout the entire operation. Outside a storefront, a long metal bar is being positioned overhead, but one end is barely supported. The entire thing is basically depending on friction to stay in place. Simple friction should not be used to support the opposite end of a heavy structural load while work is taking place at elevation. Leaving one side of a long metal bar unsecured against an unstable surface contact point creates an unreliable pivot condition, producing an overhead material control hazard the moment the material loses stable support. Always fully secure both ends of heavy materials using mechanical clamps. Above an eroding riverbank, a utility pole operation becomes unsafe as the ground loses reliable support. Municipal utility poles should only be approached, climbed, or worked on by certified utility professionals, especially when they are anchored in shifting or visibly unstable soil. The added weight and movement of a person on the structure can lead to support loss in an already compromised foundation, turning an unauthorized repair attempt into a major work-at-height hazard. Infrastructure repairs must be left entirely to certified utility companies, ensuring that utility line work and structural stabilization are only handled by professionals equipped with proper rigging and insulated aerial lifts. At an industrial processing facility, a worker uses a narrow, wet ledge beside an open processing vat as a walkway. The slippery surface creates a serious slip risk hazard. The narrow, unguarded concrete lips of open vats should not be used as walkways or bridges, especially in wet and slippery conditions. Balancing over unsecured floor-level processing tanks eliminates any margin for error, turning a minor loss of footing into a risk of moving into the tank area or coming too close to processed materials. Always install physical guardrails, heavy-duty safety grates, or raised curbs around open vats to establish a definitive physical barrier against accidental entry. Inside an aluminum recycling plant, a wet scrap bale enters a high-temperature metal processing area and causes an unexpected thermal reaction. Compacted metal scrap should only be introduced into a high-temperature metal processing area after the material has been strictly verified as 100% dry. When trapped water or residual liquids, like leftover soda inside crushed cans, rapidly convert into steam beneath the surface of liquid aluminum, it creates rapid steam expansion that can produce a serious thermal hazard for nearby workers. Ensure to enforce a strict preheating and staging protocol for all scrap bales to completely evaporate hidden moisture before the material reaches the charging zone. Physical defenses should also be engineered by outfitting all loading forklifts with heavy-duty thermal shields, ensuring operators are protected from unexpected thermal reactions. On a rooftop renovation, a large metal roofing panel shifts while being handled near an unguarded edge. Large, cumbersome construction materials should only be handled near an unprotected roof edge when workers are securely tied off to an engineered anchor point. The unpredictable weight distribution of a long metal sheet can easily exceed a worker's ability to maintain balance, turning a simple loss of grip into a balance issue before the worker can regain stability. Install temporary guardrails or a warning line to separate the staging area from the roof edge. Enforce fall protection for all perimeter work, so workers remain safely supported if materials shift.